On today's show, it's a game day preview. The Ottawa Senators looking for a statement game against the Blackhawks in Chicago.
And with the trade deadline just days away, we take a look at what roles need to be filled on the Sens roster.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today is Wednesday, March 5th, and Pilsy, we are one day from the 2-year anniversary of your trip to Chicago to see the Sens and Blackhawks.
Man, everybody's digging this up. All the tweets, people are tagging me in, and I'm just glad, Ross, it's not literally on the day. It's nice that we've got a day separation here, but I'm feeling a lot different about this one this time around. A lot more on the line for the Sens, although it was a big game last time. And I like the way this roster matchup head-to-head is looking in the Ottawa Senators' favor. But that's not to say it's a guaranteed win or it's going to be easy or anything like that. The Blackhawks actually have been hot recently, so the Senators are going to have to put their best effort forward here.
Yes, they are. And for people watching on YouTube, that was Pilsy at the United Center 2 years ago tomorrow. So to get the vibes good, 2 years ago today, we were getting our tan on in Cabo.
Yeah, and Ross, I remember I was looking at my flight. I hadn't booked it yet. I saw there was an option to have a layover in Chicago, and I said, oh, layover in Chicago. Don't the Sens play in Chicago? I saw the Sens played in Chicago. I was so fired up. I was telling everybody. I got all my bets in on FanDuel. I was ready to have an amazing layover, quick game, then hightail it back home to Toronto. And it ended up being easily, without question, the worst live performance I've ever seen from the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, it wasn't great. But look, that was then, this is now. Lots has changed, and the Ottawa Senators find themselves just 1 point back of a playoff spot. Before we get into today, why don't we touch on last night? Because the out-of-town scoreboard was immaculate. The three teams who Ottawa needed to lose did, all in regulation. The Boston Bruins tied it at 3 later on in the second half of the game. They lose 6-3 was the final score. The Detroit Red Wings were down 2-0 for a lot of the game. They make it a 1-goal game. It's super tight, but the Hurricanes hold on to win 2-1. And then the Tampa Bay Lightning beat the Columbus Blue Jackets 6-2. They really beat Zach Werenski 6-2. The defenseman had both goals. One was a shorty, but Tampa gets the regulation win there. Funny how times have changed. We're now cheering for Tampa after being so heavily against them for a part of the season. And then the Flyers lost too. The Flyers would have been in tight if they had gotten the win up against Calgary. They lose 6-3. The only team that made it a little bit closer was the New York Islanders, who beat the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets, by the way, have now lost 3 in a row after beating Ottawa. Like, they couldn't have just started that a little earlier. But all that aside, overall, this is another opportunity game for a statement where Ottawa now has a game in hand on all those teams. And because they all lost, they can jump them in the standings tonight.
Yeah, again, Ross, I think if you would have told us 3 months ago, circling the San Jose Sharks game and the Chicago Blackhawks games as elevated must-win games, I don't think we would have taken that seriously. But here's where we are, and this is how tight this race is. You cannot afford to lose games where you're the clear favorite. And the Ottawa Senators, they have to shed the demons. They have to do whatever exorcist rituals they have to do to get that idea that they can't beat the Blackhawks in Chicago. They need to figure out a way to get it done tonight. And it was looking a little touch and go there up against the San Jose Sharks, but they found a way to get it done. And I expect them to take care of business again tonight.
Do you know that the Sens have played 20 games in Chicago all time? And they have 3 wins? They have 3 wins in 20 games, according to our friend Thomas on Twitter. They won in 1995. Everyone knows where they were then. 2001 and 2016. That's it.
That's crazy to me. Wow.
Yeah. It's not great.
No, that's actually very bad, Ross.
But look, hey, you can't focus on the demons of yesteryears. You need the Ottawa Senators to come through. The Chicago Blackhawks are also 9-1-0 in their last 10 games against Chicago. Like, what is it about that?
I don't know. I mean, before it was Patrick Kane, Ross, but now he's gone, and a lot of players on that Chicago Blackhawks roster are gone. So let's see the boys get it done here.
Sorry, Chicago's 9-1 against Ottawa. The Sens are 1-5-4, right? Because obviously the Chris Neil retirement game was in there. So hey, we got some points at least. But the Sens need 2 points tonight.
Yeah, this is not a game, Ross, like the last game up against the Blackhawks where we're satisfied with 1 point. In fact, this needs to be a regulation win. Like there can't be any doubt really that this team can get the 2 points here, because if they don't, that's such a disappointment when you look at where they could be in the standings and where they will. And Ross, the New York Rangers are the only other team of consequence that plays tonight, but they're up against the Washington Capitals. So it could be another great scoreboard night for the Sens if all things go well.
And in New York, though, so it's a home game for the Rangers, but the Capitals now, they've won 4 games in a row, including that shootout win over the Ottawa Senators. I still have nightmares about that power play in overtime, though, Pilsy.
Yeah, that's tough. Wait, the Blackhawks have won 4 in a row?
No, the Capitals. The
Capitals? Weren't they on a 3-game losing streak heading into Ottawa? I don't know.
I'm an idiot.
Oh, no, it's okay, man.
We're not always right on this show, but if you say it with enough confidence, sometimes it just rolls off the tongue. Yes, now they're back in the win column after 3 losses. Then they get the
I was going to say, they snuck in 4 games real quick.
Wow. Yikes. All right, let's get to some accurate information here, Pilsy. We had a great debate yesterday about the goaltending for the Ottawa Senators, and it looks like Linus Ullmark will get the start.
Hey, I've got my Linus Ullmark jersey hanging up. I said I think I pleaded my case pretty well. We had back and forth comments on Twitter. The poll, Ross, I'm sure you're about to pull the poll up to dunk it in my face. I shouldn't have even suggested putting a poll up. I knew that would blow up in my face, but that's okay. I've had more takes go more wrong, but I did say I wouldn't be upset either way. And this is such a big game, and now you've got an opportunity to win. Let's see Linus Ullmark shut the door here. So no issues from me here that Ullmark is the guy getting the start. However, I do love Linus Ullmark, and I do think he could use a break. That's all I'll say.
What I like, though, about Linus Ullmark is it feels like he's gotten better and better over the course of his return. Like, the numbers don't show it in every game, but I feel like he's making these enormous saves. One of the ones that got kind of scooped under the rug was that acrobatic spinning falling save on Protas in the 3rd period. Like, he's dialed in. And I think that if the Ottawa Senators can play the way they did against Washington, they'll have success tonight. They just have to start strong.
Yes.
And go from there.
Because that was their main downfall against Washington, is they started a half hour late. Not to their fault, to the fault of the schedule makers starting a game at 6:30. But this one, Ross.
No.
It's a 7:30 start.
No, it's not. It's 6:30 local time. It's in Chicago.
Oh, okay, local. Yes. Okay, that's Dang it. Okay, now
we're even.
You got me spun around here. Well, I mean, Ross, everybody knows Central Time Zone is like, who cares about that? Everything's all Eastern time zone
to watch a game. But hey, that's neither here nor there. The Ottawa Senators just need to start when the puck drops right away. Can't be down 2-0. 3.5
Shut
minutes.
The clocks off. All the coaching staff turn all the clocks off. Turn players' phone clocks off, and just the only time that matters is puck drop.
That's it. And the Sens need to be ready. They know how important this game is. There's no way around that. And this could be another big opportunity. Sens are 1-0-1 in their last 2 games. So they're finding ways to get points. They beat the team they should. And they got a point against a team on the road in the building of the best team in the Eastern Conference, who had lost 3 in a row. So you knew they were going to be a tough test against Ottawa. So can Ottawa win tonight? On the other side, we'll get to lines and keys to victory, because the Senators just got off the ice for morning skate. That's next. And then we'll wrap up today's show talking about our Senators trade deadline wish list, what parts of the roster need to be adjusted. This is Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. Ross, tonight they have a reward stack where you can get a 50% profit boost on a 3+ NHL game parlay. I made my parlay. Maybe I'll tweet out a Pilsey's parlay of the day. It's been a while. And that also includes a 30% profit boost on a live bet. So FanDuel always has something fun. Check out the app. It's easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, Pillsy. So it is a 7:30 Eastern puck drop for the Ottawa Senators tonight in Chicago, taking on a Blackhawks team that is 31st in the National Hockey League. They've made some roster moves with Seth Jones being traded to the Florida Panthers, but they're coming off an impressive victory, 5-1 against the LA Kings. They've actually won 2 straight games. They beat Anaheim 6-3 on the road. So they're scoring a ton of goals. Even their loss to Vegas before that was 7-5. So they've scored 16 goals in their last 3 games, Billsy. What is your key to slowing down this offensive explosion?
Well, Ross, I talked about it yesterday when we kind of talked about what the Sens need to do. So I'll add to my key to victory from yesterday, which was I wanted them to start off the game with great puck possession. A key way to have great puck possession is winning faceoffs, and the Ottawa Senators are one of the best faceoff teams in the league, 5th in the league actually, with a 52.8%. The Chicago Blackhawks are down at 31 with 44.8. That's a huge swing in faceoff percentages. So if you want to possess that puck, snap back those draws. Claude Giroux has been doing his thing. We've even seen an uptick in Tim Stützle's face-off draw percentages. We got Josh Norris and Shane Pinto back. There's no reason why this team can't dominate in the face-offs and then lead that to puck possession and have that trickle down into more offense and less time in your own defensive zone. So face-offs for me is going to be something I'm watching big time here.
In the last 23 games, Pilsy, the Chicago Blackhawks have only had more shot attempts than their opponents 3 times in 23 games. So you're going to be able to get your opportunities tonight. My key to victory is bear down and make them count. Don't take little, feather shots from bad angles. Get to the slot and make it extremely difficult on an enormous goaltender, Arvid Soderblom, who we'll get to in a moment, who's starting for the Chicago Blackhawks tonight. First, how do the Ottawa Senators look? Well, Travis Green, as we're speaking right now, just confirmed it will be the same lineup that took on the Capitals in Washington, which means that despite missing the morning skate, Nick Jensen will be in the lineup tonight. Credit for him, man. He's battling through something clearly, but still toughing it out and getting himself ready to be in the lineup. The top line is Tim Stützle on a 12-game point streak between Brady Tkachuk and Claude Giroux. Josh Norris centering David Perron and Drake Batherson. Shane Pinto is between Ridley Gregg and Michael Amadio. And Adam Gaudette centering the 4th line with Noah Gregor and Matthew Highmore. On the back end, Jake Sanderson with Artem Zub. Thomas Chabot with Nick Jensen. Travis Hamonic with Nicholas Matin-Palo. And we already mentioned Linus Ullmark starts in goal. Pilsy, who's your locked-on player to watch?
So, Ross, in the game up against the San Jose Sharks, we saw 2 injured players that returned scored. Brady Tkachuk had 1. Shane Pinto had 2. I'm looking at our guy, Noof, number 9. We had him on the show. Hopefully he gets a Locked On Senators podcast bump. Number 9, Josh Norris, is my locked on player for tonight. It hasn't been as easy for him to get back in the lineup as it has for the other 2. He has no points in both the games up against San Jose and Washington, and he only has 1 shot on goal. I want to see him take advantage of a weaker Chicago Blackhawks lineup, and I want to see him shoot the puck. You talked about not just putting muffins on net. We know this guy has an elite wrist shot, and we know he has a huge one-timer on the power play. So I really want to see Josh Norris get things going here. And if Josh Norris gets things going, in my mind, that's going to elevate the play of Drake Batherson, which is very needed here. So number 9, Josh Norris, my locked-on player.
Their shot attempts in the game against Washington was the only line that had more than 50%. They were at 55%. That's about lines that actually played more than 3 minutes together within the game. So they're getting their shot attempts, and I'm with you. I think that it's the entire line that needs to be a locked-on line tonight, because I actually felt like David Perlins played 2 of his best games of the year. Not that the bar was super high, but I felt like he was protecting the puck really well against Washington. He does this thing where he puts one hand on his stick and leans on guys, and it was effective to give himself some extra space there. You got to be careful, because if another guy comes, you're not strong on your stick, and he can easily pick your pocket. But I think that line needs to be a driving force of a Senators win tonight in this game. But I mean, he was my lockdown player last game, and then he had 3 assists. So I'm going right back to the well of Jake Sanderson, an elite number 1 defenseman in the league. And we'll get to Chicago's lineup, but with Seth Jones gone as well, like the difference between Thomas Chabot, or rather, that's maybe a Freudian slip, because Chabot's the second best defenseman in this game. But Jake Sanderson, the difference between him and anybody else in this game should be evident every single shift. With his speed, his mobility, he was showing some physicality the last couple of games, and the points are just not trickling in. You open the well, and you are letting this water leak all the way till it's dry. In his last 12 games, so during Tim Stützle's point streak, hasn't been a point streak for Jake Sanderson, but he's got 15 points in his last 12 games, 4 goals, 11 assists. That's absolutely sick. And I think what we're seeing is a guy who understands how good he is. We talked with Brad Schlossman when he signed. First year in Nodak, it was about just doing the basics. Learn the trade before getting into the tricks of the trade. Well, I think we're seeing that at the NHL level. It's taken a little bit longer. He set a career high in points. He had 38. Well, guess what? He got 38, 39, and 40 in last game. So he's up to 40 points on the season now, and we know how elite he is defensively, backtracking, defending in his zone, adding the physicality to it. I will be all eyes on Jake Sanderson tonight as a puck possession master. We know Sportlogique has the stat of how much time that player has the puck on his stick. I expect it to be a minute more than anybody else in this game.
Yeah, I love it, Ross. Jake Sanderson has really kind of found his stride, pun intended, because he's such a good skater from when this season started and he was struggling, and now he's there. I want to see Sanderson and Zub shut things down. But, Ross, I will say, he played over 31 minutes last game against the Caps. Let's roll the D lines a little bit more and have him playing less than 30 minutes in this one.
I think where Jake Sanderson's going to be key here, and again, we'll get to Bedard in Chicago, but he should be out there every time Bedard's out there, because he can match him stride for stride, and he's got a longer reach, and he can really frustrate Connor Bedard in this game. So that's going to be a matchup that any hockey fan should be excited to see. That's how the Senators line up. Now let's take a look at the Chicago Blackhawks, where Connor Bedard is the price of admission for this team. But ironically, we talk about 16 goals in the last 3 games for the Blackhawks. Bedard has 0 points in those 16 goals, which almost makes me nervous, because it's only a matter of time for the 19-year-old future superstar. He's centering the top line with Colton Dack, not Kirby Dack, it's his brother. On the right side, Frank Nazar, who we were super high on in his draft year in 2022. That's an extremely young and inexperienced top line. Second line, little more experience. Ryan Donato, as of now, is the centerman. Ottawa has been linked to him in trade rumors. We know that they're looking to rebuild, and Donato's had a really nice season. He's centering Teuvo Teravainen and Ilya Mikheyev. The third line is Andreas Athanasiou with Landon Slaggert and Tyler Bertuzzi. And the fourth line is Lucas Reichel with Pat Maroon and Craig Smith. On the back end, it's, I almost said Marc-Edouard Vlasic. It's not him. It's actually his cousin, American defenseman Alex Vlasic, with Crevier is on the right side. An enormous human being. I believe he's 6'8". The second pair is Ethan Del Mastro with Connor Murphy. And the third pair is Wyatt Kaiser with Alec Martinez. And Arvid Soderblom will start in goal. Let's begin there. Are you surprised that after Spencer Knight had an elite debut after the Seth Jones trade from the Florida Panthers, are you surprised that they're putting him in the backup seat tonight?
No, not super surprised, Ross. I think you just trade for a guy like that. It's a whirlwind of emotions, and it's kind of crazy times for a player getting traded like that, especially that's Spencer Knight's first time dealing with this in his hockey career. He stops over 40 shots. I think if you're the Blackhawks, it's not like this game is do or die for them. So I think it makes sense they started Soderblom here, and that bodes well for Ottawa Senators fans. But Ross, his overall numbers and record, not great, Soderblom, but we were looking through his game logs. He's the type of goalie that can pull a huge game out and shut the door if need be. Now, very few and far in between, but he has been able to do it once in a while.
Funny enough, he's kind of like Peter Mrazek in that sense, where Mrazek has games where he's unbelievable, but overall he just doesn't have the consistency. Soderblom is 25 years old, and he has never played the Ottawa Senators before, but this season he's 8-15-5 with a 302 goals against and a 906 save percentage, which is respectable in the situation he's in. But in his career, he has 15 wins in 79 games. Now, it's 70 starts, but 79 games. 15, 49, and 9 record. There's no excuse for the Ottawa Senators not to be able to score 4 tonight. That's the goal. Who's your lookout player on Chicago?
So my lookout player on the Chicago Blackhawks is going to be number 86, Teuvo Teravainen. This guy is such a stud. I feel like he's one of the more underrated players in the league. He's so consistent. He's hit over 60 points, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the way he's projected, this will be his 5th year in his career of getting more than 60 points, Ross. And he's been one of the hottest players for the Chicago Blackhawks here. You mentioned that Bedard hasn't had a part of any, or points, I should say, at least, of any of the Blackhawks' last 16. Teuvo Teravainen has been picking it up big time. He has 8 points in a season-long 5-game point streak, and 14 points in his last 9 games. And he leads all Chicago Blackhawks players with 14 multi-point games this season. And he's only 1 point behind Connor Bedard for the season. So this is a guy that's very dangerous. I thought it was a really nice move by them bringing him back. He was a Chicago Blackhawk back in the day, won a Stanley Cup with them, and they brought him back on a nice deal in free agency. I actually think, Ross, obviously Bedard is the most dangerous player on this team. But that line of Teravainen, Donato, and Ilya Mikheyev, I would say is their best line. And I wouldn't even say it's that crazy to get Sanderson and Zub out against that line once in a while as well. I think you want to key them in on Bedard, but once in a while, like let's say Chicago has an O-zone draw in the Sens zone and that line is out. Not a bad idea to get Sanderson and Zub out because those guys have been buzzing lately.
Okay, I've got 2 lookout players. One, we have to talk about Connor Bedard. It'd be crazy not to with Chicago. Before his current pointless streak, Connor Bedard had a stretch of 29 games with 30 points. So I think that people's talking about how Bedard hasn't been the first overall pick a la Ovechkin, Crosby, McDavid. He is still an extremely dangerous player in the offensive zone. Now, he's more undersized and I would say well-rounded than those previously mentioned players in the defensive zone. So you need to make him play defense. But it has been a struggle recently for Connor Bedard to get anything going. Over the course of his last 6 games, he's -7 with no points.
And Ross, didn't you? I think it was you that was mentioning, isn't it something like he's had like 30 different line combinations or something?
Well, it'll be 37, if not 38 after tonight, because they just moved Landon Slaggert off his line for Colton Dack.
Yeah, like how are you expecting a young player to find his way in the NHL if you're constantly changing players on his line and he has no opportunity to get any chemistry? Like, I feel for the kid. It's been a tough go for him in Chicago.
And my other lookout player is Ryan Donato, because who knows? He might be in Ottawa Senators. He's having a really nice season. Ryan Donato, who's on a long-ish point streak right now. He's got points in 5 straight games, 3 goals, 5 assists for 8 points. He's up to 22 goals and 45 points in 59 games playing on Chicago. But let me tell you a little something. This will be the little nugget of today's episode. Did you know that he is a cousin-in-law of Brady Tkachuk?
Brady Tkachuk is cousins with everyone in the NHL. No, I did not know that.
This is through marriage. I just searched up his elite prospects, and it says his cousin is John Farinacci, which is Emma Tkachuk's brother. So that means that they're also cousins, which means that through marriage, Ryan Donato is cousins with Brady Tkachuk.
Wow, that's awesome. Great little nugget there. Digging into the family trees here on Locked On Senators podcast. Ross, I have a diabolical plan here for the Sens.
Okay.
If I'm
Always
Steve,
trade.
yes, but if I'm Steve Stais, I'm calling. Who's the Blackhawks GM? I can't keep track.
Kyle Davidson.
I'm calling Kyle Davidson.
Are you actually calling him, or are you Pierre Dorion calling him for content? Remember after the DeBrincat trade?
No.
Remember they did the video of the call and people could see Dorian.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Or Ross, maybe don't even pick up the phone. Just yell down the hallway. But get into Davidson's ear and be like, look, we really like this Donato kid. We're going to raise our price on him. We're going to go crazy for him. We really want him. But I think we don't want to risk him getting injured in tonight's game. So you need to healthy scratch him. Then we're going to see how the game goes. We're going to see we're going to evaluate our own players, evaluate our room, and then we'll talk trade talk after. So really make the push, really sell it to him that you want Ryan Donato. Have Ryan Donato sit out this game and then call back and be like, I think we're good. The roster's nice. I don't think we're going to make any moves. Kyle, thanks for your time though. Just find a way to have Ryan Donato sit out this game, even if you got to pull a fast one there. Maybe that's not exactly that's not a great way to gain a reputation as a GM in NHL circles, but you got to do what you got to do to win games here. So I'm down to get a little sneaky.
All right, 7:30 Eastern time drop.
Stais.
It'll be Pilsy and Martian on the postcast tonight. On the other side, at any moment, there could be a trade.
Whoa.
We talked about targets. We've talked about which players the Senators should be in on. But what about roles? How does the wish list look? We'll get to that next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. All right, Pillsy. So this begins a stretch of games tonight because I know that in the standings, it's not the most important for an East-West team. Also, the Senators' last game on the road against a Western Conference team, which feels wild with more than 20 games left in the season. But the Senators, after tonight, basically play team after team after team after team that are competing for them in the same race. The NHL put up a tweet yesterday, Pillsy. The Senators have 11 games left against teams that are in the same race as they are, the most in the NHL.
They control their own destiny, Ross, or at least they have the opportunity to do so.
And it's going to be incredible theater. And as Brady Tkachuk told Pardon My Take, that episode is available now wherever. It was a great interview. They're playing game sevens every night right now. They said, what about the playoffs? He's like, we're in the playoffs right now. Like, we are playing playoff games every night and have been for the last couple of games. So
buckle up.
I'm ecstatic to see how Brady comes out tonight, lead the charge here in Chicago and get the boys going. But I'm actually also with you that it should be the Norris line that gets you this game done for you and gets the victory. So with that said, the Ottawa Senators, we can pull up their lineup one more time and then we'll get into what the needs are for this team. As you look at the depth chart right now, what areas should Ottawa be focused on improving?
Well, Ross, injuries often dictate the way that teams navigate the trade deadline. And now
this is the healthiest Ottawa's been in a while. Obviously, shout out Nick Cousins and shout out to Tyler Clevin. But other than that, this is their squad.
Well, that leads me into what I was getting to, Ross, because Tyler Clevin is week to week with an injury. And now it's not very often, Ross, where you got more righties than lefties in this lineup. But I do not like the idea of Hamonic and Martin Paolo being a long-term D pair. I don't like the idea of JBD and Martin Paolo. I don't like the idea of JBD and Hamonic being a long-term solution, even though it is your third pair. Oftentimes, teams make moves for depth defensemen when they are getting to the deadline. So I would like the Ottawa Senators to find a left shot depth defenseman.
I could not agree more. A left shot defenseman is on my wish list, as is a middle six forward with some grit. Look, we love Ridley Gregg. I think he's going to be a great player, deserves the contract that he's going to get. But don't you think that down the stretch, Ridley Gregg as the fourth line center, going Stützle, Norris, Pinto, Gregg might be the play when you're fully healthy?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I really like Ridley Gregg's play, so I would like to see him stay in an elevated role more than the fourth line. But if it doesn't cost you much, Ross, and you're able to find a way to have him slot down lower in the lineup and not rely on Gaudette to be your fourth line center, I'm okay with that, depending on the price.
Because he can play the game like a fourth liner, right? It's not like a guy like Josh Norris you're not going to put on the fourth line. But like I feel like Ridley Gregg could slot in nicely there. Like Greg, Gregor, and Gaudette, even the triple G line as the third. You move Perron down to with Pinto and Amadio, and then Ryan Donato would look pretty good with Norris and Batherson, a guy who's shooting the puck, 22 goals this year. I think that would be a nice way to elevate things. I also like Donato's not the grittiest guy, but we put on our list here a middle six forward with grit. If they've got scoring touch, even better. We also have a top six winger to play with Tim Stützle. I don't hate the line with Brady Tkachuk and Claude Giroux. It's not as effective as it was 2 years ago, obviously, when Giroux set a career high in goals. I think that's more of the pipe dream. That's basically, we could have just put JJ Peterka there if that happens. But if you're getting that, you're probably going to have to give up a guy who plays on the NHL roster. So it'd be player in, player out. It would just be to get a different look. So I'm really keying in on a middle six forward that can have a bit of scoring touch, a bit of grit, that can move around the lineup. You saw Donato's playing center tonight. He can play the wing as well. That would be the key number one asset I'd be looking at if I'm Steve Staios at this deadline. You already brought up the depth left shot defenseman, but to make any of this work, you're probably going to have to move Anton Forsberg. And he's played better. He actually hasn't played much, but he's played better when he has been in over the last 10 games. But if you are going to move that $2.75 million cap hit, you're comfortable with bringing Levi Merilainen up, I'm cool with that. But you have to get an insurance policy behind that. An AHL or NHL two-way contract goalie needs to come back for a fourth or a fifth or a sixth round pick. Just somebody. Like we just saw Vanacek get traded for a 25-year-old AHL NHLer. I know there's money involved in that. That might be what Forsberg's trade would look like on the way out, not getting much value back. But Ottawa would need to get a goalie back if that is the situation on a league minimum deal who will probably play in Belleville.
Yeah, even if you got to go to the waiver wire, Ross, what's Chris Drieger's contract now? Because I assumed Florida had to send him down through waivers acquiring Vanacek, right?
Yes.
I mean, Chris Drieger, bring him back to the Sens. But just the key is someone that has NHL experience and is on a minimum deal. Just getting back to Donato quickly, he's my top six winger I put with Stützle. If the Sens were to acquire Donato, bump Brady Tkachuk down onto the line with Norris and Batherson. Hopefully that helps get those guys going. And then have a line of Donato, Stützle, and Giroux, in my opinion. And talking about middle six forward with grit, Ross, I've been very adamant that I'm not interested in acquiring Brandon Tanev at a $3.5 million cap hit. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
The report is it's okay.
I get excited.
That's cool. The report is that Seattle is willing to retain money on him. So if you can get him at 1.75, okay, now I'm a little bit more intrigued, and that makes a little bit more sense. And that is a middle six forward with grit. So and the
speed. They call him Turbo.
Yeah, Turbo, exactly. Seeing ghosts out there.
Man, imagine Brandon Tanev and Noah Gregor on a line. Now all of a sudden you got some speed in the mix.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So that would be a lot more attainable in my mind. But I have to remind everyone, I think a lot of people think retaining salary is just something teams do to be nice to make trades work. That is not how it goes. If Seattle was to retain salary on Brandon Tanev, that would increase the price that the Sens would have to pay to acquire him. So that's a part of the equation as well.
Would you have done the Trent Frederick trade where you had a third team in, so you have more cap flexibility? The Oilers are getting him for pennies on the dollar, but they gave up a second, a fourth, and a prospect to do it.
I don't think so, Ross. As a rental player that's going to play in your bottom six, and he's hurt right now, is he not?
Yeah, but I don't think it's anything major.
Yeah, still. And a second round pick for a rental bottom six, a little rich for my blood. But this is a seller's market. If you're going to acquire anyone, you're going to be in a bidding war, and you're going to have to find ways to get it done. And it's probably going to cost you an uptick more than their market value is.
Yeah, they're trading like a good college player, but that's like not a high pick college player, but a guy who's done well with Boston University. Max Wanner, who's another prospect. So they gave up two prospects, a second and a fourth for Trent Frederick. So that just that's to tell you what the market is like if you want to get a third team involved and really negate the cap hit. Like if you do that with, well, the thing with Chicago, though, you mentioned it off air, they don't have any retention spots left.
Nope.
So that makes the Donato situation a little bit more interesting. Again, why we have the Forsberg note at the end, because 2.75 for a $2 million deal, could something be worked out there?
And Ross, it's tough because my whole kind of idea was the Chicago Blackhawks are a team that could accept Anton Forsberg. Well, now they've got four goalies. Laurent Brossoit obviously still on LTIR, but now they've got Knight, Soderblom, and Mrazek and Brossoit. So they will not be accepting Anton Forsberg, in my opinion. So that makes that a little bit more difficult to deal with here.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And we talked, and I think we set the over-under at 1.5 trades. I think I'm taking the under at this point.
Yeah, it's not looking good, especially in the seller's market. I'll ask you this, though, Ross. We kind of really keyed in on it being time that JBD is moved. But with Tyler Kleven injured now, do you feel the same, or do you think that's someone that the Sens are going to hold on to as kind of their own depth defenseman rental?
I mean, we don't watch practice, and that's the only time people have seen him play since I saw him boots on the ground in Winnipeg. That was the last game he played.
We saw practice Friday.
True, we did. Well, we were smooching the gallery there with Scoops, Claire, Julian, McKenzie, Dean, and Gord. Like, we weren't focused on practice, Pilsy. We were networking, as the people say.
I had one eye on the rink.
Okay. Well, tell me how he looked then.
You look good.
Okay. Oh, man, I'm excited, man. Game day. Let's rock and roll tonight, 7:30 Eastern start. More on Twitter at Sens Central and on Instagram, LockedOn.Senators. Pillsy, any final thoughts from you today?
I got a final thought, Ross. You're not throwing the knuckleball curve on me and getting me off my toes here.
Levi Merlainen assist and 35 save win.
Oh, damn. I actually, you know what? You added to my final thought. I did not know Levy had an assist in that game.
Pillsy, final thoughts from me. Belleville gets a big win, 4-1 over Wilkes-Barre.
Got you. You intercepted it. You could have added with the Levy assist because I did not know that. Man, tough on me there. But yes, a 4-1 win, including goals from Zach Stapchuk, a beauty shorthanded goal where he just rips it.
That's the one that Merlainen got the secondary assist.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Backhand feed behind his net, outlet pass. Jorian Donovan, 2 primary assists too.
And if we're talking about assists, how about Tyler Boucher getting an assist in his return to action? There was a lot of Belleville Senators players returning, and they were poised for a win there. We put our money where our mouth was on FanDuel because that felt like a good one and it paid off. But Ross, that is a huge win for Belleville because they are now tied with the Syracuse Crunch in points for that 5th spot in the North Division, which, if you're not familiar with the AHL playoff format, that gets you into the playoffs. They both have 58 points, but your Belleville Senators have a game in hand. So don't count the B-Sens out of it just yet.
Nope. And Tyler Boucher, you mentioned an assist, his first game in a while. Hey, after 1 point in his first 21 games this season, don't look now, but Tyler Boucher has 6 points in his last 8 games.
Attaboy Boucher. He needs consistent playing time, and we're gonna see an uptick in his point totals here.
Let us know in the comments below your thoughts on our wish list for the Ottawa Senators and any player targets with the trade deadline 50 hours away. 50 hours away at the time of this recording. We're seeing moves, though,
Start the
Pilsy.
countdown.
There's been some moves. We talked about the Vanacek to Florida trade today. We had Seth Jones to Florida a couple days ago. You had Trent Frederick to Edmonton. Pieces are moving, and we'll be here whenever the Ottawa Senators make a move. For today, we say goodbye. We'll see you in the postcast tonight. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. Thank you for liking, watching, listening, and subscribing to the show. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.